Hi, welcome back to my A Tale of Stars and Shadow read-along. Today we are jumping into chapter 20. I'm going to get straight to it. Alright, I think this is going to be a fun one. Eventually it was over. Talyn dismissed the wolves after assigning Talyn and Corin to escort Cuinn back to his rooms. If she had her way, he would have guards surrounding his tower all night, but they simply didn't have enough men for that yet, and besides, the prince didn't want it. She wondered when Ravania was going to push the point with Cuinn, or if he ever would. If Ravania was testing her, well, she'd yet to prove anything to him. As she walked along an open walkway in the direction of her room, still unsettled by what Cuinn's magic had done to her, she caught a flicker of shadow out of the corner of her eye and stopped. A shiver ran down her back. Subconsciously, her right hand reached for the hilt of one of the scythes at her back. A deep breath. For the first time since she'd arrived at the Citadel, the darkness of night had a hint of menace. She wasn't sure if it was her imagination, or if it was simple instinct, but a warning thrill of danger brushed across her senses. Her heart jumped as footsteps sounded coming towards her, fast. Movement flickered again in her peripheral vision, and this time she swung quickly enough to catch the outline of a figure moving across a rooftop in the distance. It vanished almost as quickly as she spotted it, but she was confident she hadn't been imagining things. The footsteps came closer, and suddenly Theak's stories about wild, unnatural creatures in the forest below came into her mind. Fear tingled. She forced it away and carved her mind in a quick, well-practiced move. Her scythes were halfway out of their sheaths when the owner of the footsteps appeared. Theak. He stumbled to a halt at the sight of her, of the scythes glinting in the nearby light of a lamp, what must be the readiness in her stance to attack. It didn't take him long to steady, though, gaze shifting from her scythes to her face. "I was hoping to catch up with you. I'm uneasy, Captain." "Me too. She began. Then, too far away to make out clearly, she saw two more figures, hanging from the railing of a walkway under the same roof. As her eyes strained to try and make out more detail, they clambered over the rail and disappeared into the shadows wherever the walkway led. A quick scan of her mental map of the Citadel, they were heading in the direction of the main Falcon barracks, which was near the quarters of the Queen and her two elder sons. "Get back to the barracks," she spun, voice urgent. "Wake the others. Arm yourselves and get to Prince Cuinn's quarters right away." "What is it?" Theak's hand reached for his axe. "Just go," she barked, "and be quick." Her second didn't need telling twice. He turned and ran for the barracks. Talyn moved in the opposite direction, breaking into a run, heading straight for Cuinn's tower. As she did so, alarm bells began pealing throughout the palace. Her heart thudded in her chest, anxiety twisting inside her. It took her wind away, made her legs burn with the effort of running. She couldn't fail again, not for the first time she'd tried since. The breath rasped in her throat as she forced her body into a sprint, pushing herself faster, faster. Within moments, she burst out of a pair of double doors and onto the swaying bridge leading across to Cuinn's tower. Someone was already there, a darkly cloaked figure, face covered by a hood. Reckless Tal, Sari's voice whispered through her mind. And she was. In her panic, she'd come sprinting into potential danger without even taking stock of her surroundings. The figure on the bridge stiffened as she appeared, and a flash of metal glinted silver in the moonlight. More than a year since she'd been in a fight, and yet her body responded as if it were only yesterday. Extended at full run, she had no time to stop or swerve. Instead, she dived out over the railing of the bridge just as a knife hissed through the air where her head had been a minute earlier. She rolled in the air, free-falling a few meters before reaching out to grab the railing of the nearest balcony. Her arms and shoulders jarred, but she let go before the force was too strong, and falling again, she twisted out wide, flipping gracefully and angling her body towards a balcony lower down. She landed in a crouch, one palm slapping into the ground for balance. Then she went still. Her heart raced, body tingling and alive with adrenaline. A moment later she was on her feet, swinging onto the railing, and then leaping for the balcony above. Her fingers just caught the edge of it, and she brought her legs up, catapulting herself up and over before rolling into the shadows. She looked up. The bridge to Cuinn's rooms wasn't far above now, the cloaked figure still there but now moving, peering over the railing, presumably looking for her. She remained still, hidden in the darkness of the balcony, until whoever it was straightened and moved back from the edge. After waiting another full minute to ensure he didn't reappear, she climbed onto the railing and leapt upwards, using every bit of Callanan ability she had. It was just far enough. Her fingers scrabbled for a moment, then gripped the drainpipe on the outside of Cuinn's tower she'd been aiming for. Taking a moment to catch her breath, she then shimmied up the drainpipe, moving ever closer to the underside of the bridge. Once she judged she was close enough, she braced her legs against the wall, pushed off hard, and leapt up again, twisting mid-air. Her jump took her above the height of the bridge, and her searching gaze quickly found the cloaked figure. Mid-flight, she pulled out her sai. It swung as she came down, slamming its hilt into the hooded head as her feet dropped. He crumpled without a sound. She dropped to her knees, adrenaline and the unaccustomed energy she'd just used in those leaps making her momentarily lightheaded. Cuinn. Sari's voice prompted her to push through the weakness. Ignoring her trembling muscles, she shifted over to the prone body, giving him a good shake to make sure he was unconscious. Then she took a deep, steadying breath, sheathed her sai, and ran for the tower door. She shouldered it open without thought, only just catching the glint of a blade as it flew at her head. Desperately she ducked aside so that the thrown knife flew past her face and out over the side of the bridge. Shit, she swore, freezing momentarily as a sharp burst of fear went through her. Calm down, Talyn. Sari's voice was sharp. Someone echoed her curse, and then came the bright flare of flint igniting. Talyn stood with the prince in the corner of the room. I'm sorry, Corin stuttered in horror, pale face illuminated by the lamp he'd just lit. I thought someone was coming to attack the prince. She was jittery, too much adrenaline, too much strength drained from her muscles. Her mind wasn't as clear as it needed to be. Barging in like that had been stupid. Focus. She'd trained for this. Don't be sorry. Talyn forced her voice to crispness and crossed the room to the windows. You have excellent reflexes. That was my fault. Help me get these drapes closed. If there are any archers outside, I don't want them having a clean shot into this room. You think there are archers outside? Talyn's voice shot up an octave in alarm, yet he didn't hesitate in moving towards the windows. We have to prepare for the possibility, she said. Have you seen anyone out here? No. We escorted the prince back, and just as we were about to leave, the alarm sounded, so he stayed, Corin answered. He was taking a good look out each window as he closed the curtains. The fingers of his left hand tapped nervously against the knife in his belt. The garden below is empty. Someone was out there. She glanced back at the door. Whoever it was tried to kill me on my way in. Theak's gone for Halun and Zamril. Now that the interior of the room was invisible to anyone outside, Talyn turned to the prince. Are you all right, your highness? I'm fine, he said, silver white wings rustling in what she thought might be irritation. But I'd like to know what's going on. What do you mean someone out there tried to kill you? I was going back to my room when I saw at least 3 strangers in dark clothes scrambling across a nearby rooftop. I came straight here, only to literally run into a man standing out there on the bridge. He's unconscious now, but I've no idea how many other intruders there might be, or what they're after. The prince lifted an eyebrow. How exactly did he get unconscious? He attacked me, she said flatly. That rarely ends well for people. Were the men you saw heading this way, Captain? Corin asked. No, she shook her head, but that doesn't mean there aren't others. So now we're being invaded, I suppose. Cuinn dropped onto his sofa with an exaggerated sigh. Dear me, Captain, but you sound awfully paranoid. You probably just saw some wingfolk too drunk to use their wings properly trying to get back to their rooms. There was a party tonight, remember? With respect, your highness, if that's the case, then why are the alarm bells ringing? Talyn shot a surprised glance at Talyn. His words had been deferential, but firm. Cuinn scowled. Ravani isn't as overly paranoid as your captain seems to be. Nobody is coming to kill me. Do you want me to go out and look around? Corin asked bravely. Both he and Talyn ignored the prince and looked to her. She wasn't sure whether that was a testament to growing trust in her, or a reflection of their attitude towards Cuinn. She suspected it was the latter. No. In the past she'd have been out there, hunting, chasing the danger rather than letting it come to her. But she was King's Shield now. It was her responsibility to stay and protect. She wasn't sure she liked the change. Our job is the prince's safety. We'll stay here with him until Theak gets here with Halun and Zamril. Then we can secure the area. Maybe we should go up to the bedroom, Corin suggested hesitantly. It's on the next level, but there's only one window in there and a single interior door to guard. How exactly do you know what my bedroom looks like, human? Cuinn questioned. Good thought, Talyn nodded. Her turn to ignore the prince. A knock at the door cut her off. They all froze until Theak's voice barked out, It's me! She gestured silently for Talyn and Corin to take the prince upstairs, and waited till they were gone before going to the door and answering it. Theak stood there, axe drawn. It was hard to read his expression in the darkness, but his voice was calm when he spoke. Who's that? He gestured to the unconscious man. Don't know. Attacked me with a knife, though, she said quietly. Come in. Halun and Zamril followed him inside. The big man had left his sword behind, instead clenching a wooden club. He seemed as steady as Theak. In contrast, Zamril was pale, no trace of his usual smirk on his face. Despite that, he held the sword in his hand steadily, exactly as he'd been taught. The beginnings of pride flickered in her. I ran into the Falcon on the way, Theak said. He wasn't sure what had triggered the alarms, but he told us to stay with Prince Cuinn. He'll assign some Falcons to secure the outside of the tower and let us know as soon as it's safe. Good. She thought for a moment, mind running through King's Shield procedure. There are 4 floors and 3 entrances to this tower, so let's make sure we cover each one until the Wingguard get here, she said. Zamrul, there's a roof entrance on the top floor. That's your job. Halun, you tie up our unconscious man on the bridge so he doesn't try anything if he wakes up. Then leave him there and guard this door from the inside. Theak, you watch the windows and guard an entrance on the lower level. I will stay close to the prince up in the bedroom. She had to hope that Ravnia would hurry securing the tower. She could only rely on herself and Theak to fight effectively if they were attacked. The others were still far too new in their training. Danger prickled under her skin, threatening to send her self-doubt into crippling paralysis. She had been caught out unawares and barely avoided being killed. She wasn't in fighting sharpness. She'd been lulled by the lack of obvious danger in Mithraina and a year away from battle. It took a few moments for her to realize the others had left and she was standing alone in the too-hot room. She swallowed, hating that her grip on her side was slick with sweat. Reacting is never a good way to face a threat, Sari's voice echoed. But dwelling on that now won't help, and you're doing fine so far. Stick with Prince Cuinn until more Falcons arrive. Taking a firm grip on reason, Talyn climbed the stairs to the bedroom and sent Talyn and Corrin back down to join Theak and Halun on the lower floors. She automatically scanned the room, noting with approval that her 2 wolves had drawn the drapes close together over the windows and lit only a single lamp. Cuinn sat in a chair by one window, sprawled out comfortably, bored expression firmly in place. He was drinking from a tumbler half full of dark-coloured spirits. A massive bed sat in the centre of the room, covered in a thick doona. At its foot was an ornate chest, and an archway to her right led to a narrow space full of clothing. Near the window was a smaller version of the harpsichord he'd played earlier in the night. Despite the size of the bed, the instrument and the chest, there was still plenty of open space in the palatial room. She thought her entire guest room might fit in it. Like what you see? Cuinn inquired. I'd like for you to go and stand in that clothing closet for a moment, she said, while I take a quick look out the window. Surprisingly, he did as she asked without comment, though he did heave an overly dramatic sigh as he passed her. She padded over to the drapes and pulled them a fraction away from the glass. The alarms had stopped ringing a few moments earlier, and now an eerie silence filled the night. Outside, the dim outline of the garden below was visible. She tensed as a shadow flickered, but then realized it was only a tree branch moving in the breeze. She stared till her eyes were straining, but saw nothing to concern her. Anything? Cuinn's voice in her ear made her almost jump through the roof. She swore before she could stop herself, then forced her body to calm. No, she said tightly. Could you please stay away from the window? Your man guarding the roof. What's his name? The thief? Cuinn frowned. He's terrified. I can feel it from here. Zamrul? Yes. Cuinn's face was a mask of concentration, half hidden by the hair that fell like a curtain over the right side of his face. He spent his whole life hiding in the shadows, you see, running and hiding from danger. That's how a thief lives. Now he has to sit up there and confront the danger. He can't run and hide like he's used to. That scares him to the core. You can understand his emotions as well as read them? Talyn stared at him, astonished despite herself in the situation. That's an amazing gift. Far from a gift, Captain. His emotions are irritating. He sighed and dropped back into the chair, picking up his drink. Could you do something about it, please? At least he said please, Sari whispered. She nodded and checked the windows again. Nothing out there. If you want me to deal with Zamrul, then you need to move into the closet. I'm not leaving you alone in here, sitting right by the unlocked windows anyone could climb through. Fine. Taking a drink with him, he tucked his wings behind him and stepped into the closet. Ensuring he was out of sight from both the windows and anyone glancing in from the hallway, she went to leave. You may want to tamp down on that annoyance of yours too, his voice drifted from the closet. It's giving me a headache. Biting back her scowl, she headed out of the room and up the stairs. Zamrul was sitting on the top floor, back against the wall, eyes trained on the entrance, a trapdoor through from the roof. A thick bolt had been slid across the opening from the inside. Nothing short of a battering ram was going to get through, but even so he was pale, face covered in a sheen of sweat. Everything all right up here? She asked. Zamrul started violently at her words, then relaxed a little when he saw who it was. He gave her a jerky nod. How are you doing? She asked, moving to sit cross-legged beside him. Zamrul may be rude and smug at the best of times, but in his face she saw an echo of the panic that had descended upon her only moments earlier. It wasn't something she could ignore in someone else. I'm terrified. His voice shook, words laced with bitterness. How am I supposed to be a wolf when I'm scared all the time? This isn't me. I don't know why you picked me. Talyn rested her head back against the wall, keeping her voice light. My mother taught me something once. She's a warrior too, one of the Callanan, she said, a smile coming to her face at the thought of her mother. She told me that courage isn't about not being scared. Courage is about being absolutely terrified and still going forward. He scoffed. Really? She insisted. You don't look scared. He looked away. That's just because I've had a lot more experience in managing my fear. She hesitated, eyes firmly fixed on the bolted trapdoor, but not really seeing it. Instead, her gaze was filled with the memory of a thick forest and a body on the ground, green cloak tangled underneath it. You asked me before how I knew what true fear was like. Every time I fought before, I had... Even now she couldn't say it aloud. Had to clear her throat before she could continue. But things changed, and tonight is the first time I've faced a fight alone. I was scared. I'm still scared. I'm not even certain I can ever be what I was before. But right now it's my job to keep Prince Cuinn safe, so I pushed my fear away and I focused on my job. A heavy silence sat between them. Then Zamril shifted slightly, his shoulders straightening against the wall. What happened? He asked softly. Stripped of its cockiness and contempt, the thief's voice was a pleasant drawl. She stared at her hands. Maybe one day I'll be strong enough to tell you the story. He nodded, accepting that, and she stood. What matters to me is that you're here, Zamril, and haven't run off, despite how scared you are. He gave another short nod, gaze returning to the entrance. Talyn climbed back down the spiral stairs, nodding at Talyn and Halun, who stood by the front door. Talyn, go and keep Zamril company. He's getting bored. I think Halun can handle anyone trying to get through the front door. The winged man rolled his eyes. He and Zamril remained extremely reluctant wingmates. But Talyn gripped his arm as he turned to go. Don't forget that he's part of your wing. If 20 assassins come through that door, he'll be fighting at your shoulder, whether you like him or not. Talyn sighed, nodded, and headed up the stairs. Cuinn was leaning against the archway to the closet when Talyn returned. His head came up the moment she appeared. This is ridiculous, he began. Ravani should have secured us by now. It's not good enough that I'm expected to sit around in the dark like this. She went back over to the window, glanced outside. The garden remained dark and empty, the night sky clear. I'm sure the falcon is working as quickly as possible. He snorted, brushing past her as she returned to his chair. Well, at least you did something about Zamril. His panic has dropped from overwhelming to manageable. He paused. What did you say? He was very scared. I told him that courage wasn't about not being scared. It was about being scared and doing something anyway. Cuinn flashed her a grin. The son of a bitch looked amused. Would it surprise you to know that I'm not afraid right now? No. You've convinced yourself that there's no reason anyone would come after you. Therefore, you don't believe you're in any danger. You're clever, Captain Dynan. To that she said nothing, turning her back on his snort of laughter and taking another look out the window. Still nothing. She wished Ravani would hurry up. Why did your King's Shield send you here? She stared at him, window forgotten. He sounded genuinely curious, which meant he didn't know. Somebody here requested it. Your mother, I assume. Don't look at me, he shrugged. I had nothing to do with it. You don't find that odd? He grinned again, clearly having worked out how much it annoyed her. I have very little to do with the workings of Mithranar, Captain. I prefer to be aboard as infrequently as possible. Refusing to be baited, Talyn went to the doorway, checking that the hall outside was clear. Where was Ravani? Returning her attention to Cuinn, she leaned against the doorframe, a pose that looked casual but gave her a view of both the hallway and the windows, and injected curiosity into her voice. Maybe she could take this opportunity to learn more about the prince. I heard you have a different father to your brothers. Who was yours? A lazy grin spread over his face. No idea. She lifted an eyebrow. Hasn't your mother told you? I've never cared much either way about my father, he shrugged. And as far as I know, she never told anyone who he was. He died when I was young, apparently. Increasing interest tore her attention away from the hallway. Cuinn's father had been a Dumnorix. Why had he died so young? The better question is why the Queen kept his identity a secret. It might just have been because she took him as her lover without marrying him. That doesn't seem to be much of a big deal here, Sari sounded dubious. Good point. How did he die? She asked Cuinn. I think she said something about a fever. I wasn't paying a lot of attention at the time. That didn't sound right. A fever? And your magical healers couldn't help him? The prince let out a long-suffering sigh, his head falling back against the chair. I assume it was a bad fever. Either way, he was never in my life. What does it matter who he was or how he died? A knock at the front entrance below interrupted before she could push further. Stay where you are, she said, leaving the room. It was Ravenir. Cuinn was opening the door to him and four of his falcons as Talyn came down the stairs. Without a word to her, the falcons dispersed throughout the tower. The situation has been contained, Ravenir said. 3 intruders were trying to get into one of our barracks storerooms. We're not sure why. We interrupted them in the attempt, but they all escaped. The palace is now secure, and we've doubled the falcon guard. If you and your wing want to get some rest, my men will stay here to watch the tower until morning. Talyn nodded, concealing her doubt. 3 intruders went to all the effort of infiltrating the palace just to break into a barracks storeroom? That seemed unlikely. Are you sure it was just 3? A thorough search of the area found nobody else. What about the man outside? Ravenir raised his eyebrows. There's no one out there. She couldn't help but glance behind him through the open door. The bridge was empty. I was attacked attempting to enter the tower earlier. I managed to contain the threat, but we had no spare resources to watch him. Last we saw, he was unconscious on the bridge outside. She hesitated. That makes at least 4 intruders, sir. For the first time since she'd met him, Ravenir's impassive demeanour shifted, something like unease flickering across his face. Are you saying one of those intruders tried to enter Prince Cuinn's rooms? I'm not sure, actually, sir, she said. When I arrived, he appeared to be keeping a lookout, not trying to get in. As soon as I dispatched him and entered Prince Cuinn's tower, there were no further attempts to gain entrance that we could tell. All right, we'll do another search of the area around this tower. He rubbed his forehead, the only sign her information had disconcerted him. His voice was brisk and unconcerned. Get some rest, Captain. She hesitated. Ravenir looked impatient to be gone, but she had a lot more questions for him. Can we speak further in the morning, sir? I'll send a messenger for you when I have the time, he nodded. Good job tonight, Captain. Ravenir departed. Theak, Corin, Tierslin and Zamril appeared from above and below, and she quickly relayed Ravenir's news. You did excellent work this evening, she told them. Go on back to the barracks and get some sleep. Tomorrow morning we'll review tonight's events and identify areas where we can do better next time. Tierslin's wings rustled. I might just go up and let Prince Cuinn know what's happening, if that's okay, Captain. Sure, she waved him on. It saved her from having to talk to the prince again. Theak, can I have a moment? The wolves dispersed without further comment. Now that the adrenaline had faded, they looked tired and worn. Corin's hands were shaking, and Zamril's gaze hadn't left the ground, even as he walked away. Cuinn tailed behind, silent as always. Talyn fell into step beside Theak as they followed the others over the bridge, relaying to him what she'd told Ravenir. He frowned. So you don't think he was trying to get in? That's not the impression I got. When I ran out onto the bridge, he was facing towards me, not the tower door. Obviously he was ready to fight because he threw that knife pretty quick, but I don't think he was trying to get in. Almost like he was watching the door? That doesn't make sense, Captain, Theak muttered. None of what happened tonight makes any sense. 3 intruders break into the palace and go straight for a barrack storeroom while one hangs out on the bridge leading to Prince Cuinn's tower? I agree, she sighed. Hopefully the Falcon will have some more information for me tomorrow. They reached the junction where Theak needed to turn off to head to the barracks. He stopped and cleared his throat. I thought they did well enough tonight, Captain. Agreed, she said. Zamril was terrified, though. Prince Cuinn sent me up there to try and calm him down. His emotions were that strong. Despite his terror, he stuck around, and I didn't expect that. If he runs, he's got nowhere to go, Theak pointed out. I'm not forcing anyone to be here, she said sharply. I know that's not your intention, Captain. We've got nowhere else to go. That pretty much gives us no choice but to be here. Maybe, she nodded, but I'm not the reason none of you have another choice. That doesn't mean a thing, he said. You're a fair captain, and a skilled one too, and I'll never forget that you gave me another chance. For me, it's not so bad. I've always been a soldier. But for Cuinn, Zamril, and Corin, they're young. They should have other opportunities, dreams, but instead they're human in Mithraena. That gives them the choice of starving on the streets, resorting to crime, or being a warrior in this unit. She huffed, trying to keep the incredulity from her voice. You can't tell me that all humans here have no choice apart from starving on the streets or resorting to crime. No, he said thoughtfully. There are plenty who do well for themselves, own their own businesses, or have a trade, but a good many don't, and for them, life can be miserable. You're speaking from experience. It wasn't a question. I was lucky. I got into the city patrol, was all he said. All right, Theak, you've made your point. Her voice had an edge. She was exhausted and wrung out from her own emotional battles of the evening, and the last thing she wanted was to be blamed for things that weren't her fault. Is there anything else you'd like to make me aware of? He had the grace to look chastened, and dropped his gaze to his feet. It's just... Seems to me you're a good sort, Captain. Not your fault you don't understand how things work here. I just thought you should know, that's all. Now she was the one to feel chastened. He hadn't been blaming her, just trying to help her understand the men in her wing a little better. He'd been doing what she wanted from him from day one, to be her second. Thank you, Theak, she told him quietly, for your trust. He nodded. You'd best go get some rest. It's been a long night. She watched him go, then turned to trudge back towards her guest room. Now that it was all over, her muscles ached in protest, and the calf she'd twinged running through the streets of Dock City on her first day hadn't much liked her Callanan acrobatics under the Tower Bridge. He's still alive. Talyn scoffed at Sari's attempt to be encouraging, but she didn't reply as she unlocked her door and went inside, heading straight for the soft bed. She didn't have the heart for it tonight. Okay, that is the end of chapter 20. As always, please jump out here if you don't want to be spoiled by anything in my author commentary. If you are leaving us here, please consider liking and subscribing if you haven't already. That's a great help to me. But otherwise, I really look forward to seeing you next in chapter 21. Otherwise, stick around and let's jump into some author commentary. All right, let's chat about chapter 20. So this is our first taste of action in this book, with Talyn on her way back to her quarters after the reception, where she and the wolves have just provided their first guard detail for Prince Cuinn, and she spots intruders on the roofs, essentially. Now, the scene that unfolds from there is a really interesting mix of like her sheer competence and skill, and how that competence and skill is sometimes undermined by the weight and of the grief and guilt that she's carrying over Sari. And not even so much the grief and guilt, but just her fear that she's not the same as she was and that she's broken is kind of manifesting itself into reality almost. So Theak responds in the way you want a second to respond. He follows her orders. He runs back to the barracks. Talyn sprints for Cuinn's tower because the prince is her main priority in any kind of intrusion into the Citadel, any kind of attack. But her desperate need to get to him fast enough means that she's not thinking through properly how to approach the tower, and goes sprinting out onto the tower, almost gets killed by the knife. But then again, her sheer skill as a Callanan warrior is on show again here. Like, we got to unleash Talyn for the second time in this book after that initial scene when she arrived in Dock City, and she dives straight out over that bridge, does a few acrobatics, lands below, and then makes her way back up in a pretty jaw-dropping physical display to get back onto that bridge and take out that watcher on the bridge, whose motives remain mysterious at this point, and get into the tower again, shoving through that door in the desperation to get to Cuinn quickly enough, but not thinking about what might be beyond, which was Corin, who has been trained to respond quickly, and she only, again, her Callanan reflexes save her from being taken out by Corin's knife. And at this point, that she kind of realizes the mistakes that she's making, and calms a little, and is a bit more focused from there on out. Part of it is being distracted by Cuinn being an annoying jerk about the whole thing and kind of constantly baiting her. Whether his song magic kind of picks up that she needs that distraction to keep her focused from fear of failure, which is what is her overriding worry throughout this scene. But he also picks up on Zamaral's terror at the top of the stairs, and that provides Talyn and Zamaral a nice little bonding moment there, where she can admit to him that there is something wrong, there is something that maybe she can't talk about yet, but that she feels fear too. She, as an experienced and battle-hardened warrior as she is, that does not mean there is an absence of fear, and that's a good lesson for him to learn, and makes her more relatable to him, and builds that very first kind of nodule of trust between the two of them. Overall, no attack materializes on Cuinn, but the wolves do their job commendably. She's trained them well. She can't quite see that yet because she's still so focused on the fact that she might have messed up the whole thing and that she came so close to disaster. But she made it through. Cuinn made it through. The wolves made it through. Ravnir and his falcons, when they show up at the end, again, a little bit of an indication of their level of incompetence there. He doesn't really question the fact that 3 intruders made all the effort of breaking into the Citadel and sneaking through just to infiltrate a barracks storeroom. That's the first question Talyn asks. Ravnir doesn't seem bothered. While Ravnir is a dutiful man and a loyal one, and tries hard, he's not necessarily potentially lulled into the simplicity of running an army in Mithrena where nothing ever happens, but also not particularly creative in his thinking. And Talyn has a lot of questions about what's happened that he doesn't seem to, which will continue to play out over the next few chapters. And then we have that lovely scene with Theak as they walk back towards the barracks together afterwards, where she feels at the beginning that he's kind of having a go at her about the reality of life for the wolves in her unit. But what she comes to realize is that he's not. He's actually just trying to help her understand the men so that she can lead them better. And he's doing his job. Again, this is a second indication now of the fact that Talyn giving him a second chance may not have been a mistake. It may have been the best thing she could have done, because he's really starting to live up to his role as her second. And he's doing it, in a really beautiful way. So that was chapter 20. I loved being able to write an action scene. Action scenes are my favorite scenes to write, particularly with Talyn as the protagonist. She's such a skilled warrior. I love writing scenes where she's kind of unleashed, and we still haven't seen Talyn fully unleashed, right? That doesn't happen until much later in this book. But even seeing snippets of it, it's so much fun to write. I hope this is fun to read. And again, we're kind of building up to a crescendo. Nothing big has happened yet, but it is fun to get a bit of taste of action happening here amidst all the intrigue. I really enjoyed writing it. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed reading it as well. We will be on to chapter 21 very soon. Any questions at all on anything this chapter, anything you'd like to see from these read-along snippets, then please drop your comments or your questions below. I'd love to answer them. Otherwise, I'll see you soon for chapter 21. Have a great day, guys.